A common problem when scanning objects using photogrammetry arises when we are tasked to capture subjects which have very few reference features. This is a frequent issue for people new to photogrammetry and will almost always produce poor data, if any data at all. In this video we're going to cover a few examples of subjects that will typically be difficult, if not impossible, to capture clean data for, and show ways that we can improve the success rate of these captures while not damaging our objects. This should hopefully help you get a better idea of how the surface of your object affects the final outcome. While we're aiming to capture clean data, compromise will need to be made. In these examples we will be sacrificing our texture data for precise camera orientation and significantly improved geometry. But before I show you ways of getting better datasets, let's explain why many datasets fail at producing the desired result. Photogrammetry relies on feature points found on or in the surface of the object you are scanning. These feature points could be color variation, surface imperfections, dust and grime, or a myriad of other things. All that matters is that a good amount of contrasting points exist on your object. These feature points need to be unique and observed across multiple images in your dataset, reinforcing your photogrammetry software's confidence in their position. When our surface lacks features, we will encounter problems with camera orientation and surface reconstruction through lack of features. So for the rest of this video we will be focusing on 4 objects which I have chosen because they exhibit common surfaces that I see a lot of people struggling to capture. This will allow us to identify where problems come from, as well as potential solutions that should aid us in getting data that we can use. There are several ways to identify problematic subjects before you start the process of scanning, so let's make some educated guesses as to where the problems will arise on each of these objects, as well as the potential outcome. Clear goggles. So the problem with these is that they're transparent, and transparency is a problem because features can be seen when they should be obscured. Additionally, the clear goggles reflect and scatter light. I suspect the outcome from this will be a dataset that does not function whatsoever. So the office stapler. A stapler consists of a smooth painted metal surface and a brown plastic cap with a wood grain finish on top. Now we should get a somewhat clean alignment out of this, however the geometry will be poor with a lot of noise. So the socket extension bar, this one should be fairly obvious, but it's a shiny metal item that has no surface features aside from a small amount of imprinted text and a ball detent at one end. It's highly unlikely that we will get any kind of alignment out of this dataset. Lastly, the Lego Eric. Lego typically has a smooth uniform and brightly coloured plastic. It may have micro scratches that can help, however I doubt these are big enough to help this solve. So there's enough detail on this one to at least get a partial alignment, however the resulting geometry will be almost unrecognisable. So let's scan these objects so we can see how they look. If you've watched my scanning in the void video, then you'll probably be familiar with the setup we'll be using. We have a black polyester background, a Syrup Genie turntable, a Nikon D810 with a Sigma 50mm art lens, and a Godox AR400 ring flash with a custom polarizer mount. We will be doing 2 rotations of each object, with 25 images shot per rotation. The camera will be shifted up for the second pass to get another elevation. However, we will not be aiming to get the entire object in these scans, as we are only trying to gauge alignment and surface reconstruction. We know our subjects lack feature points, but how do we add features to our surface without causing permanent damage? There are many ways. Let's go over a few. There are a couple of high-quality scanning sprays for creating a uniform, non-destructive surface coating on objects. These are more typically used for laser or structured light scanning, but can also be used for photogrammetry. Scanning sprays typically cover the surface in a white or blue coating, almost like paint. Some sprays need to be cleaned with a cloth, others evaporate over time. Sadly, it is too cost prohibitive to import these sprays into New Zealand, so I will not be able to use any in this video. Another option is paint. I've lightly spray painted objects in the past with a black or a grey spray paint to achieve a very noise-dense surface, typically by half pressing the spray nozzle down to get a splattering effect. You can also use water-soluble face paint to give surfaces a coating, just to wash off later. James Candy recently did this and got a very nice result. Dry shampoo is a fantastic option on a budget, and is used as a replacement for the more expensive scanning sprays. This is a really great option as it comes off cleanly and can be readily available. Try to use the cheaper options as the more expensive ones tend to be invisible and will not work well for photogrammetry. There are a lot of great powder coatings that you can also give surfaces. These are either free or very cheap depending on what you use. The key thing to keep in mind with powders is the particle size. Smaller particles means you can get a better coating that does not remove any surface details that your object may have. I prefer to use talcum powder as it's very fine and cheap to buy. It has the added bonus of not dissolving in water or alcohol. Other commonly used powders are cornstarch, icing sugar, and finely ground pepper. I will be using talc for the rest of this video as I cannot source any other options due to the lockdown here in New Zealand. I'm intending on making a follow-up video showing examples of other options in use. Remember to subscribe so that you do not miss these future videos. You have a few options available when it comes to the tools used to apply powder to your surface. My primary tools are a large paintbrush, small paintbrushes, cotton wool, compressed air, and a microfiber cloth. There are several things to keep in mind when coating your surface. Some objects may benefit from small bits of tape to cover holes and other recesses which aren't relevant to your results and would be problematic to recover powder from. When dipping your brush in powder, make sure to shake off any excess. These large clumps will quickly cover over any details we may want to capture, and it will also make a very large mess. I tend to blow on the object during the coating process to remove any loose particles that may have built up. If you're finding that the dust is not sticking to your object, breathe on it as if you were cleaning glasses, and then reapply dust to that area. The moisture in your breath will stop any particles from falling off your surface, even after the moisture evaporates. This leaves a very nice fine coating. I generally avoid brushing the surface, and instead I try to create a small dust cloud around the object by flicking the brush, letting the particles fall onto the surface. This is because the brushing actively removes the coating you are trying to create. And your final coating should look like a transparent layer over the surface of your object. Looking closely at a dust-coated surface shows us the increased unique feature count, so let's scan these and see how the alignments and geometry have improved. Let's now carefully place these subjects back on the turntable. It's always good to double check that you didn't rub the coating off on any areas which need it. Reapply a small amount of dust as necessary. Let's run the turntable and see how these come out. Just watching these images come through, we can see a huge difference in object readability, with the dusted objects standing out. Looking closely, we can see just how many more feature points we have, thanks to this dust. So here are the results. The meshes you see here are rendered in Marmoset toolbag, and I have not edited the geometry in any way. The goggles dataset aligned very well, however due to the transparency of the surface we have some poor geometry in a number of areas. This is a large improvement over what we had initially. However, a thicker coating to remove some of the transparency would have helped with resolving both sides of the clear plastic. I would call this a success as it takes an otherwise impossible object and gives an artist a great starting place for the 3D modelling. The stapler improved a fair bit, with the dark plastic showing a huge improvement, overall sharpness of the surface increased, and the definition of the text on top became crisp. The socket extension bar came out almost flawlessly, with a small amount of noise on the bottom. This is the most dramatic change in quality that we have, as before dusting we could not get an alignment. So the Lego Eric saw a big improvement. We've now completely resolved the model and fully aligned the dataset. There are a few small patches of geometry that have imperfections. However, this is easily cleaned up in any 3D modeling package. So as you can see with our results, the concept of dusting holds a firm place in any scanner's toolbox. There are a few areas which did not come out perfectly in the datasets that I showed, but I wanted to be honest and show failures so that you could learn from them too. I highly recommend you try this out for yourself, as it's a valuable skill to have. Cleaning up the object post-scan is an important factor to take into consideration. For talcum powder, I find the best cleaning method is a quick wipe down with a microfiber cleaning cloth. There is no limit to the scale of object that you are dusting, only what you can commit in time and energy. Cars are one of the most challenging objects to capture, on account of their reflective paint and glass. Applying powder to a car's surface creates far more feature points to be found and used in the process of 3D reconstruction through photogrammetry. Other scanning methods also gain an advantage in these situations. Thanks to Daniel Cahill for these images. That wraps it up for this video. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something today. If you have any issues, then come join me and many others in our dedicated 3D scanning Discord. I'd love to see images of objects you scan using the methods discussed here. Have a good one.